You're listening to the UK Christian Rap Podcast on
Kingdom Culture,
the home of UK Christian Rap. And we are joined as always by DJ Cassie and Calvin Venus. But today is a very special episode because we're joined today by our special guest, Ivor Etienne.
Hey, you got my surname right. You don't know how many people get my surname wrong. And
How did they say it?
They call it all sorts of stuff. I won't even go there with it. I can't even do it wrong myself. But yeah, it's like, oh, well done.
Like Thank you.
Thank you. Are you St. Lucian, Dominican?
Dominican.
Oh my gosh, look how we got Dominican in there.
Yeah, I know. There's Dominican, St. Lucian, and Montserrat. I think there's kind of three brothers, and they were all Etiennes, and so one went on each island, and the rest is history. So there you go. Yeah.
So this is a podcast filled with lots of Caribbeans. I'm St. Lucian. Calvin
okay.
is...
I love St. Lucia.
Kind of Jamaican and Trinidadian.
Yeah, it's all right, man. It's all good. I love it too.
Jamaican, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. It's a nice blend. It's a nice mix.
Blend.
Yeah. So like we're just gonna set a few achievements of Ivor. Something that really kind of it's bowled me over. I was like, wow, this is phenomenal stuff that you've done. For instance, you worked as a studio engineer, a sound engineer for BBC Radio 1, 2, 3, 4, and World Service.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. I mean, you went from program controller to managing director of Choice FM in 2 years.
Yeah, that's correct.
I mean, that's brilliant. And for those who don't know Choice FM now, I believe it's Captial Xtra.
Yeah, it's Captial Xtra, that's correct. Yeah.
It's brilliant. This one really like pulled me back. You made number 11 on the Guardian newspaper Ethnic Minority Power.
Yeah, that was a while ago. Yeah,
wow.
But yeah, that's what I did.
That's
when
brilliant.
I was around, that's what I did.
There's another one here. You managed a company with a multi-million-pound turnover and kept it in profit.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I
some
did
good
with Choice.
stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Ivor Etienne, welcome to the podcast. We would love to know what has been your greatest media achievement so far.
Wow, my greatest media achievement. It has to be Choice because at the time when I took over from Choice, Choice, I'm trying to think of how all the stories. Choice didn't have a program controller at the time when I took over from Choice. And apparently the guy had enough and left. And so it was left to the DJs to kind of run the station. And the managing director at the time, called Patrick Berry, he said, we need someone. And I had just left the BBC at the time. And they actually brought me in to produce the breakfast show because they didn't have a producer for the breakfast show. And when they knew that this guy from the BBC was coming over, everyone got their tails up and what's going on, But when they soon realised there's certain bits of structure and order and all that kind of stuff, then it was just a matter of time. The person, and I know the person who was acting program controller at the time, was a salesperson. And don't get me wrong, and don't get me wrong, sales is important. But if you don't know about programming, music, scheduling and all that kind of stuff, you're just telling the DJs what to do with a sales point of mind, where it should be the opposite way around. If you get it good, the sales come with that. Do you know what I mean? And I think people get that wrong, where, let's do whatever chases the money, but the program could just be rubbish. But if you get the right presenters, the right music, the right blend, the right scheduling, so every part of the day, that there'll be someone listening, the sales will come. Because part of your sales will be, part of your audience would be obviously, the people who are selling. Do you know what I mean? So they'll know that people are listening, if that makes sense. So yeah.
So your biggest achievement, we say Choice FM.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not gonna, there have been other achievements, but there's been awards and various other things. But just seeing it grow from one entity to a multi-million-pound entity. And the main thing was that as much as people wanted to, we didn't dilute, and I think that is key. And I had lots of battles in regards to dilute. At the time, it was probably the only place where you can have a 3-hour gospel show. It was the only place where you can have a 3-hour, 3-hour hip hop show. It was the only place where Afrobeats was coming. It was the only place where where you had regular programming for young people. It was the only place where we did talk shows that related to, you know, black life and black lifestyle. You know, it was unique in those spaces, and the money came to that, because when the advertisers or people who wanted to kind of sponsor, they didn't know where to go, so they went straight to Choice. So yeah, that was an achievement. I ain't gonna, I have to say that it's up there, definitely.
It changed from Choice to Captial Xtra.
Yeah.
I mean, that must have been a bit of a personal transition when you saw this happening.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind? What were you thinking when it was happening?
At the time when it changed from Choice to Captial Xtra, I wasn't there. They actually said, "See you later, alligator," and they had in their mind what urban music was going to be, because it was always a thing about sales and what's the right words, and so if you've got strong personalities who says, no, we shouldn't really be doing this, and yet you've got somebody saying, no, we should be doing it that way, then that's what you're going to get. And they then started to bring in their own, they changed the strap line, they started bringing their own programming, they put EDM on there because they thought that's what the audience would appreciate, and it just went down. And they then had to take 2 years or a bit to realize, let's get back to playing old school. Let's get back to not having such a tight playlist. Let's get back to having some specialist shows. Let's get back to what it was before. So yeah, that was a interesting time, but it is what it is. And I think, I think there was a day when it was on the Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning, it was Choice FM. And then after the news, it became Captial Xtra, just like that. Yeah.
Wow.
And you'd be like, 10 o'clock, imagine it, 10 o'clock, got the news and it's Choice and blah, blah, blah. And then 10:05, listen out to the brand new station called Captial Xtra. And it was Captial Xtra. That's what happened. That's how.
Yeah. Do you feel like a lot of the history of Choice was lost in that transition?
Yeah, it was. Because if you think about it, they wouldn't have done that to a lot of other stations. You know what I'm saying? You think about Capital, you think about Smooth, you think about Kids, you think about some of the other stations out there. They wouldn't have done that. But I suppose there's always a strategy when you think about how you program a station and how you, look for more listeners. And this is a true story. When I was the managing director of Choice, we sat down and I put together a document about how to make Choice grow. And the document was called Choice FM from Cradle to Grave. And why I called it that was because I looked at the assets at the time that Choice had. And the assets that Choice had was 2 FM frequencies and 1 DAB platform. And I said, right, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make Choice be split into 3. And we're going to keep some of the heritage presenters, and we're going to make sure that, everyone's going to still work, but in a different space. So 103.6 would be, 103.6 would be for the young kids. So it'd still be on FM, and you'd have people like Master Steps, and all the young, fresh stuff would be on there. And so that was a demographic up to about 20, 21. But it'll be right like to kids, 13, 14. And then after that, you'd use 96.9, which is the heritage station, because everyone knew 96.9. So you'd have a little bit of a freshman, but your traditional DJs would be there, the Jenny Francis's, the Daddy Ernie's, etc., etc. And then after that, on DAB, we'd kind of call it Choice Classics or Choice Heritage or whatever. And actually, Ernie would have been in that one because he was slightly older. And that was a way of attracting the older audience to DAB, so that you would then start to grow things. And this is also a good way of saying, right, let's see how each audience, materializes. Let's see how each audience grows, and there'd be, different marketing, etc., etc. And I was told it was not a good idea. It was rubbish. No, I don't do that. Wow. And now what do you have now?
We have to.
What do you have now?
When you think about the BBC radio network, it's done like that. It's
absolutely
highly targeted, it's still formulaic. You can still run stats, but now you can market in the right way and target the right people in the right time.
Absolutely.
I did have a question about that actually, because as you were talking, I was like, man, I've seen that happen to so many media outlets where you see a good thing from, let's speak from a, I guess a black community perspective here, because I appreciate everyone who watches this is not all black and from Britain, but I see it over here where you see something successful, like at the Real McCoy, a lot of success. All right.
Okay.
All right. A lot of success. And then you see like an Asian version of it.
Yeah.
And they're running the same sort of, formula. Very simple, highly targeted. And then suddenly the money comes in. Yeah. Somebody wants to break it up, move that person there, move this person here, and start moving and shaking.
Yeah.
Boring things that has happened. I think that's what happened to Kiss 100 in early 90s. So this is like...
Mm-hmm. Kiss went through a massive change. If you think about Kiss,
the name of the group.
Kiss went through a change, and also Jazz FM. It went through because Jazz FM became JFM because they wanted to hide the jazz. Yeah, they did because they didn't want the other. We call it JFM, and then in the end they came back to being Jazz FM. Yeah, because they realized you was losing some of the soul part of it. Yeah. Kiss FM started off as a dance station.
Yeah,
he never had pop in his format. You know, they would have balked. All the DJs and presenters would have balked of having a pop, and then it gradually drifted into something else. As to now, if you think about the Kiss brand, you've got Kiss Tree, you've got Kiss, you've got Kiss Fresh. You know, you've got different brands, all on one or another platform, serving a particular audience.
Yeah,
and so coming back to that, you mentioned the BBC. I was at the BBC for quite a while. I've sat in playlist meetings where they didn't know who R. Kelly was, they didn't know who Mary J. Blige was. Yeah. They used to, because they used to mention things wrong. There was moments where a song would then get charted into the UK Top 40 chart, which I produced, and they didn't know who the artist was. They didn't know how to pronounce the name and all that kind of stuff. Wow. But that music was there. So what do you do? And so now you had the situation of all this black music is getting into the UK Top 40 chart, which means it has to be on the Radio 1 playlist. But, so how do we deal with that? How do we try to integrate certain songs, which are pop songs, with an R. Kelly or with a Omar or with a whatever? And that's why OneXtra was created.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's almost like
the reason why
you had relevance, you had community based programming.
Yeah.
Where it's led by people who were also DJing in the community. They understand what the community wanted.
Yeah.
And they lost the value. It's almost like they couldn't understand the value of that. They just thought they just listened to this program because it's the brand name. It's these guys were tastemakers. The voice, I guess they were not just tastemakers, but the voice of the community.
Yeah.
They spoke from them, they spoke within them, and then suddenly you start to see these DJs move to late evening, and then another person comes in the drive time.
Yeah, that's it.
And then you hear this formulate, and you hear a lot of pop coming in, and you're like, where is this station going? Like, that's right. Don't you understand? You got to lose ears that way.
Yeah, that's it. Well, you see that. Yeah, you can see that. Yeah, because you can see that because their way of thinking was we want to play a certain record 5 or 6 or 7 times during the day. Yeah. So we don't, so they expect you to listen for an hour and a half and then leave. Yeah. Whereas with the old Choice brand, they expected you to listen on hours on end.
Yes.
Yeah. And then grow your audience from there. So there was different ways of doing that. And so you had repetition. You had a lot of repetition. You had a lot of churn, as you would say. They'll look at all the music and look at the analytics of it and kind of analyze, is this the right, we used to have arguments about, do we play a reggae record? I said, why not? Oh, well, we've got reggae. No, but if it's a popular reggae record, you play it. It's going to be part of the mixture of the playlist. And these are all the discussions that we used to have. But we need to put an EDM record in there. Why? Yeah, because we want to. No, you don't have to. The audience is already there.
What is EDM, Ivor? Because some people might not know.
Yeah, sorry. EDM is electronic dance music. Yeah. So if you know EDM, you know what EDM is. And it's now a form that I don't think you really hear that much, unless it's mixed with other things. So that was
we live in a culture now where stats runs the show. It's running, algorithms are running our streaming. It's running the record labels. The record labels don't even look or understand new music. They don't even care if something spikes and hits the stats, and they're like, "Oh, that's a growing trend. Let's tap into that, but let's not kill our current roster. So let's add them to the roster, maybe get a person in there, you know." And so we live in a stat-generated atmosphere. It would be good to know, seeing that you've seen this creep into Choice and then Captial Xtra. It'd be good to kind of have you share your thoughts and feelings and how to live in such a climate now.
It's difficult to live in such a climate because it feels like you are separated from the music and all you're looking at is the numbers of what stats does. Stats can be manipulated. Mm-hmm. And I think what people fail to understand is that if you go by stats alone, you know, your stats can change from one day to another if you don't have that consistency. And the best radio stations have a certain consistency, a certain style, a certain I use the word brand, but probably not the right word. That means that the stats don't matter so much in the short term. They matter more in the long term. You can have a spike in a stat. You can have, you know, someone who's very popular, but they could change the whole way and feel of how your station is. So, you know, if you have somebody and it's like, yeah, it's great stats, there's millions of people watching it, but the song doesn't feel right for the station, you can then stop those listening hours going up. And then you can reduce the listening hours down. You can reduce the number of people who pick it as an appointment to listen. And then when that stat then goes away, when that artist goes away, how do you get those people back? Because they already heard one song which you was hammering so many times, and they think that's what the station is about. So, you know, some people just got to look at the stats, but look at a lot of other things and take it with a pinch of salt. And there's a certain similarity or sameness, I think that's the word, that is kind of in radio stations at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
And so, exactly. You can think, I can think of one station, and I can, you know, when they mention an artist, I know it's going to be one of two records. I can think of, you know, and that's fine, that's fair enough. But there's, you know, the artist might have more records, but they would never take that risk of playing that record. So let's say a certain radio station say, and the next song you're going to hear is a classic from Stevie Wonder. It's only 2 or 3 songs that station will have, but you know, Stevie Wonder's got a wide repertoire. So it's kind of like, okay, I know they're going to play, they're going to play Happy Birthday, or they're going to play something like that. You know, I just called to say I love you, whatever. You know, it's going to be one of those 3 records, and I kind of make a game out of it because I say, yeah, I told you so, because they don't because they don't know their repertoire, or they'll say, yeah, we're going to play the next song's a classic from Bob Marley. It's only 2 records they'll play because they're not going to play anything else. But Bob Marley's got a huge repertoire. So you've got to look at how your station's programmed and give the listener a bit of respect in a sense of, if you play a Bob Marley record, let them kind of guess what it's going to be, because then they'll think, oh, I love this. You're playing stuff that I haven't heard for a while. I'm going to stick with the station that plays me stuff. And then that becomes part of your programming. Rather than you play the same 1 or 2 Bob Marley records and it's kind of like, well, I knew it was going to be that, so you kind of tune elsewhere.
See, what I find interesting is the fact that, like, you know, radio is now a glorified playlist. Like, I might as well play a Spotify playlist. You may as well have the radio station on Spotify or iTunes or what have you. All right, you may as well do that. What I find almost an eerie thought. Do you remember when Whitney Houston came with "I Will Always Love You"? Yep. That was played in virtually every single radio station. Yep. And the weirdest thing is, remember that the first beat, there was no beat, it was just all a cappella. Yep. You couldn't do that. You couldn't have art like that now.
No. It's very.
I think, was it 30 seconds before you heard?
Oh, yeah, exactly. And I know some people who wanted to do an edit on that song.
Yeah.
So you've got all these records, and they start in a certain way. You know, can you cut a bit out of it so it's not too long? And obviously her record ends in a particular way. You take it to the best radio stations take it to the last note. Others would be trying to find a cut here or there. But you know, you're right in a sense. You could have, at a time when that record was on, tune into different stations at different parts of the day, and you would have heard it 10 times. You know what I'm saying? Because they think it was that popular, and they knew that whichever their audience was they wanted to grab that female who was between 18 to 25 because they knew that she loved that record, and play it accordingly. But Whitney Houston had a lot of other stuff which they would not have touched. So
So quick question: do you feel like the conglomerates are killing off radio and music in this country? You know, Global owns so much of radio. Bauer Media owns so much of radio in the UK. Do you feel like that kills the individualism and the creativity and the flow of, like, you know, getting a DJ or getting a certain type of playlist on? Do you feel like it's just coming from a boardroom? It's stats and figures. It's people who are disconnected from the industry.
It is kind of coming from a boardroom, but what I would say is they're being creative in their own way. Because if you were to listen to one of those particular stations at any point of the day, they do certain things that are seasonal. So you wouldn't hear, you know, they might have 3 Bob Marley songs, but they might play one in season 1. They might play another one in season 2 or whatever. So there's a certain rotation in that. But yeah, it is all about, as I say, a lot of these stations, they have other branches of those stations, and they're just chasing the advertiser. So if you come with £100 and you want to advertise on me, I say, right, I can get you on 5 or 6 stations. Well, back in the day, you can only get on 1 or 2. So I'm trying to keep your money with me. You spend an extra £200 with me, and I can get you on 8 stations. I can get you on different stations. So, you know, the advertiser is kind of dictating in a way how the music is led. You know, they don't kind of have a say in it, but it's like, right, so if you like this type of music and this is the numbers we do, then we'll make sure that, you know, we can put you on all these stations. We can make sure that you can get all this kind of advertising that is applicable to this. And then another station will do the same thing. No, I want to take £50 of your money off there from their £200 spend and put it on my station. And they'll say, wow, they're spending £200 there. If I can get £30 of that spend there. And so in the end, you have stations that are doing all the same thing just so that they can carve away at this money, you know, that is there, which is an advertiser's money. And the people have to then become creative. And, you know, have you noticed that when a presenter comes on air, they don't say their full name. It's just, hi, it's John. Hi, it's Pete, you know, and this is Sue taking you through the next hour. And then for the next 30 or 40 minutes, you won't hear anything. And then Sue will come in at this point. You know, a lot of the stuff is voice tracked. So, you know, they do lots of voice tracking. You know, there's no conversational parts. You know, the speech is virtually 30, 40 seconds max, you know, and the speech bits that you do hear is the advertising and the news, because they believe that's where the speech comes. And then you then have to look at,
and then monetized every second.
Absolutely. Every second is monetized. You would believe, you know, certain stations, it becomes a little bit overbearing. But every second is monetized in a sense of you probably hear more adverts in a particular type of day, but then you'll have a long range break of music that will keep you going until the next ad break. And you know, and you know that certain ad breaks will be tailored for a particular time. So you won't have anything too, I use the word graphic, I don't know if that's the right word, during the day, because that could scare that could scare your audience. So that means that if you then have those type of adverts on there, you're paying a premium. You're paying a premium to be at this particular time. And so one of the things that Capital Radio used to do back in the days, when they used to have a presenter called Chris Tarrant, who's one of the biggest people, you know, he did Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. They calculated that the advertising they did from the breakfast show from 6 till 10 when he was on was the money that was made, and then after 10 o'clock in the morning was all profit. Exactly. So when Chris Tarrant said, I'm not sure if I want to do this anymore, they got into a panic and they paid him so much money just to stay on for an extra year so they can find someone to take over from him, because they knew that 6 till 10, all the adverts in there, that's our bread and butter, that's whatever. But 10 o'clock onwards, you know, it's our profit. And you can then have like millions of people up here, and then if you haven't got the right person, it's down there. And then you've got to build right back up to your drive or your overnights. And so they have to kind of find lots of creative ways to keep that slump as low as possible. So it became as even a plateau to a point. So yeah, it's there's a lot of science in what you're doing when it regards to just not having, you know, the music, but you know, the most popular music. But then you can relax a little bit more in the afternoon, or you do certain formats in the afternoon and early evening that will attract different audiences. So
so
yeah.
it's incredible.
Go on, you go.
After you, Cass.
No, so where because I'm going to change it on to plays, but you might want to stay on that subject, Charles. No,
I was going to say something else, but
But moving on, to playlists.
Yeah.
Right, as you mentioned about getting scheduling and getting music into playlists. Now, as you're aware, we do the type of music that we talk about here is like Christian hip hop.
Yeah.
And something that I know a lot of artists want to do is get their music into a mainstream station, such big stations such as maybe Captial, some other bigger names, as big names as well as I like them.
Yeah.
So what would you say about that? And as a Christian artist, if their music is Christian, well, is I don't know. I mean, I spoke to the artists themselves. I don't know if they make it for specifically Christian, but some of them say they don't. But it is about Christ.
Yeah.
So, what would you say about that type of music? You hear, obviously, I play it, so you hear it. So,
yeah. Christian artists, and it's not me trying to generalize. Christian artists will always struggle to get their songs on daytime mainstream radio. There's certain radio stations that might accept it if you haven't got Christ in it, or if you're talking about, something that's like a higher being or whatever. It might have been easier, earlier, but now I would say it's virtually impossible. Unless you're doing a collaboration with somebody, or you just don't mention God in there, or Christ, or Jesus, or whatever, because that is how some programmers are. Oh, if we play this, you're gonna, be alienating this audience, or I'm not sure, it should be like this, or I'm not sure if it should be like that. And so, if you are a Christian artist, you've got to ask yourself: is it really important to be on Radio 1 or Captial or whatever? Is there a collaboration you could do with a non-Christian artist that could work? I can think of 2 or 3 artists. I think the last time I heard something that was even close would be Eternal and is it BB Winans? I only want to be the only one that loves you. You know the song I'm talking about, yeah. And that crossed over. You know what I mean? Because if you think about Eternal wasn't really a Christian band at the time. And so certain things helped that song, because nobody knew who BB Winans was at the time, but him doing that song with them crossed it over because of Eternal. You think of I'm trying to think of Shackles by Mary Mary. Again, certain songs could cross over.
I even played it in the clubs, man.
Well,
I wasn't
exactly.
Time,
and certain songs get
it had
played
the
in the
right
clubs.
beat and vibe. So.
Exactly. A lot of songs, we think of certain club songs that kind of graduated into other radio stations because they didn't have that kind of messaging. If you've got that messaging now, and you can think of lots of artists who are doing lots of great music, they would have to say, do I want to get my song on Radio 2? And Radio 2 might have the playlist to do that. Can I want to get my song on Radio 1? And it might have the playlist to do that. But what I would say to Radio 1 or the Radio 2 is you start from a specialist angle first. Why isn't there a Christian hip-hop show on Radio 1? Why isn't there a Christian music type show on Radio 2? And those are the 2 national stations that we pay our license fee for. The commercial stations don't have to do it because, as we've discussed before, it's all about the money, it's all about the numbers. They might think that, there might be the numbers to do that. They might not have the advertisers or the sponsors to do that. But one of the things that, coming back to Choice, is that we made a concerted effort to have a radio show between 7 and 10 on a Sunday that was specifically that. But they didn't like it. They wanted to put it. I think before they took it off, it was on like at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning or something ridiculous like that. So you these are the things that artists have to are challenged with, and they have to ask that question if they want to do that. Again, you think about plugging, like plugging a record and all that kind of stuff. I know some people still do it, but what happens when a plugger takes that record of that artist? They're thinking straight away, is that person going to like it? Is that person going to support it? Because then I'm just wasting my time. And I've been there many times in a playlist meeting at Radio 1. It's like, yeah, I've got this and I've got that. And, I've got this kind of gospelish type record. I don't know if you're going to like it, but, see what you think. And that was them plugging the record.
Yeah.
Imagine it. You You paid somebody to plug your record, right?
Yeah.
And they kind of come to you, right? And it's like, yeah, well, you know, it's all right, you know, but if you don't want it, it's all right. But you know, not a case of you supporting that record for what it is.
Yeah.
And these people are getting paid. They're getting paid points. They're getting paid for chart positions. They're getting paid for all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, if it's not their priority, they're not gonna, you know, they're not gonna do it. And I've had many artists who then call up and say, why didn't you like my record? And I said, what could you talk? Yeah. Well, did my record out? I said, I haven't heard it. You need to talk to your plugger because your plugger hasn't brought that record to me. And then the plugger will say, hey man, you know what? You got me in trouble with that artist, you know, that artist, you know, because and I'll say, well, you shouldn't have told him that you was going to bring it to me and I was going to support it. Let me listen to it first, and I'll know if I'm going to support it or not.
A quick one about do you know the iTunes charts? They removed Christian gospel category. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, it used to be in there, and you know the Christian music industry used to really thrive off of that.
Yeah.
And iTunes just made a snap decision to say, "Oh, off it goes." And now we don't have any type of charts that represents Christian music in the country other than a step forward. So, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think they made a mistake. And again, it's about lobbying. Someone made that decision. They didn't kind of think, oh, wake up this and think, no, I'm not going to do it. Someone made that decision consciously to remove that chart. And I would ask why. And I would also kind of campaign and lobby to get that chart back, because these things can happen. You know, if you champion it enough and you make enough noise about it, it will come. But if you don't accept that the chart's gone, it's going to be gone. If they then think, well, yeah, we took that chart off 6 months ago and we didn't get any complaints about it, then they're going to think, well, we did the right decision, didn't we?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of things of, even if you have, you know, other charts that kind of are comparable and challenge that chart, they've got to see that to think, oh, you know what? I think we might have made a decision that was wrong, and let's review that. Let's look at that. And so champion for it. You know, it's, you know, just like any other chart, there's a lot of charts that weren't there, you know, that weren't there on the time, that have now gone on because they've been popular, and you just got to fight to get that chart back.
In terms of like top 40, how did they compile what makes top 40 in the country?
Well, as I say, it was done by a company that kind of did it by returns. So it did it by lots of record shop returns. Obviously, at that time, it's done by different ways now. And so that then compiled the top 40 of what the top 40 records that the UK was listening to. But again, charts can be manipulated. So you have to put lots of other data in there. Now it'd be more streaming, and now it'd be more other things that will kind of make up what the chart would be. But I can, you know, I produced the chart at a time, and I remember, you know, I've had a couple of horror stories there, but, you know, you had to make sure all the records were there. You had to make sure all the artist information was there, so that when you presented the chart, you knew what you was talking about. And I think that was the thing, you know, it kind of came down to, right, got the information, this is what this artist is doing, let's put it out there. And then the pressure was on then, if the song is in the top 40, it needs to be part of the playlist. And that is, again, key, because then it's like, well, why have you got this record that you're playing in the top 40, but I don't hear it regularly? There must be an audience for it somewhere, but you're not playing it. That doesn't seem to be fair.
So would you encourage artists who have music, that are Christian music, to go towards mainstream, or where would you advise them to place their music?
I think it's, as I say, it's up to them. It's up to whatever strategy they want to encompass, because I think sometimes artists just make music for the sake of making music. They don't think of the strategy about, you know, so you spend all your time in the studio, you're recording something, whatever, you lock yourself away, you don't want to get influenced by this person or that person. And then when you come out of it, the first thing you want to do is let everybody hear it, which is fair enough. But if you haven't got a strategy as to how that music gets played, who to give it to, and you know, and all the kind of, the plot used to be called the plot of the song or the plot of the album or whatever, then you're just going to scattergun it. You're going to just say, yeah, I'm just going to put it out there. And I've seen people say, look, I'm going to give you 4 songs and you play the best one. Now, I could play one of them that you might not even have. You might think, I didn't think it was that good. But yeah, I think it matches my station. People don't even listen to the station when they're giving their songs to us. They just kind of give it to somebody, and if they expect them to put it on. No, they're not going to do that. So, you know, to the artist, what do you do? Because if you've recorded 10 or 12 songs, you're only going to release 3 or 4 because you really want to release the others to be a part of an album or whatever. But, you know, people do things differently now. But you then have to plug that record. You then have to kind of go out there and be at all the interviews and be at all the appearances and all that kind of stuff until you get sick of hearing that record. Otherwise, what have you gone into the studio to do? So just have that plot in mind, have that kind of strategy in mind when you are putting that record out there.
I've got this thought. There's that song says "Video Killed the Radio Star," but I feel like it could be remixed to Spotify playlists killing the radio stations. You know, especially the independent ones. Like, how do we? What's your thoughts on that? I mean, Spotify is growing, you know, by the thousands and hundreds of thousands like every week. How does radio combat that? Is radio going to die off? Is it
radio? You see, this is the thing about it. If you listen to radio stats and radio figures, radio seems to be growing, especially digital radio. So, you know, unless you've got your own Spotify charts, unless Spotify turns to radio, which then kind of defeats the object of what they're doing, radio is always going to be there. People need to hear something. People need to kind of listen to other things that are there, because radio is supposed to help, you know, think, oh, I didn't know about this artist. It's supposed to be an education. I didn't know that this song was like this. It's supposed to be like that. With Spotify, you've got to go hunting for it. But radio, it's already out there. You kind of find it as you go along. So there'll always be this battle with Spotify and radio, and I believe they can quite coexist quite easily. It's how you kind of value each one, because I can put on a Spotify playlist, which is all the music I like. You know what I mean? Put it on for somebody else, and they're not gonna like it at all. How does, you know, obviously Spotify use subscriptions and various other things. Radio's trying to do various things like that, but they've gone in the other direction of trying to monetize their content. They've gone in the direction of making sure that they have different brands. So, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if it was commercially viable, and I'm not saying it's not, that Capital Radio could have a Capital Christian radio station. Do you know what I'm saying? If they felt it was commercially viable, or they felt that they could do that on one of their platforms. Because if you think about other stations, you've got absolute 60s, absolute 70s, absolute 80s, absolute 90s, absolute 20, you know what I mean? Because they're trying to kind of make sure that we don't miss out on any individual, you know, and you'll, again, love our brand until you get tired of that one, and then you'll go to the next one. So
I think that's what's key, because like no matter how you arrive at this podcast, you have to realize that we are living in a culture where it's algorithmic and it's personality driven. And every big conglomerate is thinking that way. They're thinking stats. You're looking at less staff and less decision makers, because I mean you're a key decision maker, and they wanted to remove you so that the head office has in greater control. And it's getting more formulaic because it gets cheaper that way. That's right. It means that they can pivot on an idea quicker. This is the reason why you have Disney meeting up with Hulu and ESPN. It's the same company.
That's
different brands, and they're waking them together. So now that you can subscribe to this new package that they're building up, everything's based on packages. And it's funny, because I listened to your question, Charles, and I don't think if you're an artist, you should be threatened by this scene. The reason being is because you have to realize that the game hasn't really changed. In the 70s, it was exactly the same way. You still had pluggers, you still had tastemakers. You had people who were, they made sure they had all the best DJs because they brought the biggest attention to a radio station. It's the same thing. Every big business owner doesn't care about the industry, the music, or anything. It's the same way. All they care about is the numbers. Are you bringing me numbers? And so you as an artist, you either fit in that category or you don't. If you don't, it's still okay. The reason being is I actually believe that there are less artists now. There are more big businesses. There's less artists. And so if you're like, who wants to be on a big major record label? You're no longer an artist. Nobody. Just a personality that sings somebody else's songs. That you got a whole big. You remember when Spice Girls? I think they were earning, $25,000 a year. Everybody else is eating in that team.
If you're an artist now, you are a business because you take people forget about the music business, that you got the business part. That's why it's called the music business. And if you then take that on board, and what you're saying about how things can, there's less artists who are, not even about the music. but people still love the music. You know, that's why you have, you know, shows on television about people singing and this, that, and the other. But it's what's the longevity of the music that you have? You know that, you know, there's certain artists who will leave a legacy long before, you know, before we're gone, and that music will still be playing. And I think for some artists, they know it's going to be a very quick thing. They're going to make as much money as they can, and then they're going to go. And so you've got to then look at how do we consume it, because we can consume it very quickly, or we can kind of say, this is what we want to lay down and make sure that we leave something for somebody, or legacy for somebody, or whatever. And I kind of find it funny in the sense of, I find it funny in the kind of lockdown process, how everyone became a DJ. All of a sudden these DJs appeared from nowhere, right? You know, and everyone became a cook, and everyone became this and that. And so everyone's kind of discovering different skills that they had or didn't have. But the one thing they didn't do is they didn't all join up. So everyone's kind of doing their thing, and you've got 10 people watching here, and you've got another 15 people watching there, or whatever.
Listen to this guy.
Exactly. You see, that's why, you know, radio, because you can have, that's the whole point of it joining up. That's the whole point of, you know, people keep saying to me, yeah, we need another Choice FM. Yeah. But when I left, we should have had 4 or 5 Choice FMs.
Yeah. Tell them.
That's what you know, the thing, and we can, let's spread it wider. We've got the Voice newspaper. There should be 4 Voice newspapers.
Yeah, it's true.
There should be, you know, they shouldn't have to be harping back to a station that was unique at its time and did a lot of good stuff and you know, branched out with careers and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But what it is now, we should have had 4 or 5 choices. They should have been called different names, obviously, but you should have had that. You know, there should have been a national Christian radio station, you know, and I'm not talking about the obvious ones, but so that could be just as challenging. You know, you could, you know, and that's where the artists come, because if you haven't got nowhere to put your music, the artists feel there's nowhere to go.
You know, I think a lot of it is because we're no longer competitive. We're just lemons. You see success there, you want success, you jump in there. I think it's the reason why we have so many talent shows.
It's very true.
And they're still going on. And so you get long lines. There'll be longer lines in a talent show.
Yeah.
Only there could be one winner.
Yeah, exactly. And what happens? Yeah, it's true.
About how ludicrous it sounds. You would line up for a talent show. And line up to get, you know, to create a, you know, this is why the mixtape culture there are so many verticals, so many business models you can take. Mixtape culture showed the world how you can hustle.
Yeah,
you can hustle, and there's people out there looking for something that's not on radio.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying? There's not on everywhere else.
That's right.
Why would a bunch of people buy tapes?
Yeah.
This is domestic tapes. Domestic, not even something you get from HMV, you know.
Yeah.
This is domestic tapes. Why would you buy a domestic tape of a back of a car?
Yeah.
Because it was something unique and something you believe. Now the mixtape culture is dead. All right. However, we have access to everyone in the world. You just have to be consistent. You have to have your business savvy. You have to learn from these different business models. You can still learn from the mixtape culture. You can still learn from even this radio culture now that we have.
Yeah.
Anyone can start a radio show.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Look how many businesses are now born 100% on YouTube now.
Yeah. I always say anyone can start. Anyone can start a radio station, but you need to have the right person to program it. That's the key.
That's key. And I think the ultimate. I think this is a theme in most of our shows is that, especially in the Christian community shouldn't be hard to cultivate. The reason why it's hard is because, you know, people like to hold in things themselves. They're not willing to share, but that's okay. Let them stay. I think it's what's important, especially in Christian hip hop, especially when it's a culture like hip hop. You have to understand it. It wouldn't be hip hop if it wasn't for the culture.
Exactly.
If it wasn't for the culture and people gathering and meeting and appreciating the love for this culture, you need to have hubs and centers. And you know, it strikes me when I hear an artist, a Christian rap artist, who doesn't want to perform. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. So what do you want to be like a studio artist?
Yeah.
How are you going to heard? You don't even plug your music. You know what I'm saying?
I know, it's true. I agree.
That's another thing about plugging. I mean, another thing, because what you find, obviously, artists that make music and don't really want to plug it properly. What would you say about that?
Well, I think they're wasting their time. What's the point in that? It doesn't make any sense. It's like making a cake and then not eating it. Or not giving it to people to eat. It doesn't make any sense.
You know,
there's only one big benefit from it, though.
Yeah.
Here's the big benefit with the amount of recording gear, the cost going lower. The good thing about all these artists that are going out there making their music is that after they realize that they're not making any successes, it's on eBay, and it's people like me who like to buy used gear. So, hey, it's a fact. I mean, listen, if it wasn't for the Lindrum, the 808, the TR 909, like that was in the big Hollywood studios before it even went into the records, to the pawn shops. So the game hasn't changed. So Charles, this is the reason why I'm into history, because the history keeps repeating itself.
Nothing's wrong with the sun, isn't it?
Hip hop. That's right.
Disco was killed by hip hop because disco was on all the radio shows. Stations.
No, obviously, hip hop. You know, hip hop was seen in a specific way. You know, you had Hot 97 that wanted to do a particular brand of music, but things kind of go in cycles. You'd be surprised how many music genres that used to be there back in the day that you don't hear anything at all now. I can think of acid jazz. I can think of,
acid jazz.
You remember acid jazz? Yeah, you can think of acid jazz. I can think of I can think of trip hop. I can think of various things that when you think of it, you think, oh yeah, that was out there. Jungle. I can think of
jungle.
Yeah, I remember one story of when Radio 1 came late to the jungle scene.
Yeah, they did.
And I produced the Jungle Show, the first Jungle Show on Radio 1. And because they didn't know anything about it, they pre-recorded a whole lot. They pre-recorded all the shows, and then they wanted to play it out as live. And there was this guy who was a kind of specialist. He said he was a producer, but he wasn't a producer. Because to me, if you can't edit, if you can't mix, if you can't do that, you're not a producer. Simple as that. But he wanted to have the title of producer. Fair enough. And so he brought all the artists there, and we spent like a number of weeks recording all the jungle shows, and it was called One in the Jungle, and then it was played out. This is just a 1 hour jungle show, and you can see from the numbers, it went nuts. And so all of a sudden, it's like, we should have done this a long time ago. But and it's like, when are we going to do this live? No, let's just keep calm. Just keep calm. And then at the last show, they said, we should have done it live. And I said, well, I said we should have done it live at the very beginning. And now you're trying to say, do it live now. But we can do it at the next series. We can do it at the next series. So people get scared about certain things when they see it, but it's already there. That stuff's already there. It's already there on the street. So, all these things comes in cycles. And if you're an artist now, where do you stand as an artist? Because as you said, if you record stuff and don't show anybody, I don't see the point. It's just a waste of time.
Yeah, 100%. I got a question for you about Christian media. You've been in media for many, many years, and you've got a lot of experience and a wealth of knowledge. How can Christian media, especially gospel side, in terms of how can Black Christian media, with rap, gospel music, how can it improve? Currently, you're, as you know, on Premier Christian Radio. We've got the Premier Gospel side, with a hip hop show that runs, I think, every Wednesday for 2 hours. We've also got various other churches that might have radio stations or media outlets. But how do we improve? How do we grow from the monotonous cycle of the past 20, 30 years of never really reaching our zenith, never really piercing the canvas? How do we?
I think it's about collaboration. I think some people still want to hold on to whatever when it's about collaboration. If you want to grow the music, you collaborate. You shouldn't be. The pie is big enough for everybody. Yeah. It's, surprise, surprise. It is. And the pie can get bigger, so everyone can be part of it. But if you don't think that, no, I don't want to work with that person over there. I want to keep this in. My 2 hours is what my 2 hours is, and then the 2 hours become really important. But the thing is that it becomes really important until somebody thinks that you're not important to do the 2 hours, and they'll find somebody else. So you just got to make sure that you collaborate, you can grow, and as much as gospel media's got to kind of be out there, it's got to also take a lead, because sometimes we'll sit back and we'll just wait for something to happen when we could be a little bit more proactive. You can be proactive in promoting artists. You can be proactive in promoting events and various other things, different forms of music, how it's making. But if you're going to just sit back and just wait for something to come along and then you kind of chip in, then it's never going to grow. It's always going to be like that. And then people are going to think it's, well, Christian. I've heard so much about UK Christian music that there's a sense of, you know, it's always get compared to its American counterparts. There should be no comparison. It's unique in itself.
Yeah.
And if you start comparing it, it's, you know, American gospel is born from different struggles. It's born from different situations. UK gospel or UK Christian music is again different. So let's show the best of that, because it is good. There's certain singers that you can put up against somebody else and you think, I can tell if they're American or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And we should be doing more of that rather than trying to feel that we're not as good as this person here. So collaborate more, work together more. Do you know what I'm saying? You know, make sure whether it's a radio station where it's all Christian hip hop or whatever, you know, collaborate more, and that's how the scene will grow.
Currently, Christian rap's in the community phase, scene phase in the UK. How do we get it from community scene to an industry? What would be the first pointers from your observations of it? What would be your first pointers to turn it into an industry with infrastructure and kind of like a solid backbone from a community standpoint?
Back in the day, it would be a case of you'd have a label who would kind of house all these people together. I think, you know, where we are now, I think it should be more of a movement. It should be more of a movement where you've got artists collaborating with other artists. You know, America is very good at, hey, I sing on your song and you rap on my song, and you grow it from there, and you grow audiences, and you bring new people on board. You look at different ways of marketing. I think it's got to be more of a movement. Otherwise, it's always going to be at that kind of stage where it's still just about to break, and you're waiting for that one person to have that one hit, and then all of a sudden everybody comes out. You know, I remember when there was discussion about this Afrobeat song, was the band song, and the talk was, we just need that one song to kind of break through onto the mainstream, and then all these other Afrobeat songs will kind of come through. No. Because the band song obviously was about a year and a bit old, you know, so when it came to then getting it played to the mainstream, it was new, but there's lots of other stuff coming through. You need more than one person to try and push through. You need a whole group of people. And even now, I think there's talk of an Afrobeats chart taking place.
Yes.
You know, and that's taken a long time to get together. So bring all the main players within Christian hip hop or Christian music and put your own chart together. That's what I would do. Put your own chart together. You know, manage it. Look at all the infrastructures that are there to make sure that the chart is properly scrutinized, so nobody can take it down. Work together with people so that when that chart comes out, all of a sudden that chart's really important. It doesn't have a kind of variance here or there. It's important to the artist, and it's also important to the audience that's listening. So kind of work together on that.
You have to be listening to what we're doing here today, and look at how it relates to you. Or even if you're not in this space, is there anything that's very, very similar that you can capitalize on? Because at the end of the day, a lot of these techniques that we're sharing here, this advice is transferable.
And don't forget, there are other spaces that don't have what you have. When you think about hip hop and some of the classic hip hop, even though there was beef here and there, and obviously hip hop's gone through a phase, but a lot of it was collaboration. It was. Do you know what I'm saying? Whether it's East Coast, West Coast, whatever, a lot of it's collaboration. And that was the kind of, you know, it had its own political movement. It had its own stories about, you know, being poor to being, you know, better off and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of it was a movement. And I like
the way you've been using the word movement a lot, because
it is.
You know, I like words, so like things trigger with me. When you think of somebody moving, they are being active.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm not saying it's backwards. Movement means you're going forward.
Are you moving? Like, are you going in a direction? Are you thinking about what you have? Can you see the value in what you have? Can you expand on something you're doing?
That's right.
But even more so, Calvin, when we move our body, it moves in unison with each other. The balance and the hands, the arms, the shoulders,
and there's cohesion on it. There's cohesion.
Yes,
I mean, you can't run with right leg, right hand.
No, you can hop.
No one does that.
No one does that. You can't even hop.
No, you can't do it exactly.
You won't get far if you get tired. Absolutely.
Get tired. Oh, look, it's been a great. We have to end it there because obviously, there's so much in that, but we've got to kind of.
We've got to do a part 2.
Yes.
Yeah, Ivor's up for it.
Yeah.
I'm sure after this, I'm sure there's a lot of you artists will have a lot of questions. That you're going to want to ask, and make sure you put them in the comments. And And then
if you miss anything, just watch again.
Yeah.
Get your notepad out and write down.
Yeah. I don't mind doing a part 2. That's fine. That's not a problem.
Yeah. So if you want your questions answered or any questions, just post them.
Yeah.
You can ask Ivor.
Yeah.
Ivor.
Ivor. Thank you for being our guest.
CCC show Ask Ivor, right?
Yeah,
Ivor. Thank you for being our guest, Ivor, and enlightening us with your experience. Really, it's been great. You can connect with him on social media at Ivor Etienne. Please do that. And thanks for listening, everyone. Subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Spotify Podcasts to stay up to date with the UK CHH podcast. And remember, for all things UK Christian rap, go to kcmix.com. That's kcmix.com. Till next time, peace. See you later.
Peace.
Kingdom Culture.